Hi y'all, and welcome back to the garden. So I'm going to show you some storm damage that happened earlier this week, walk around and see a couple things I got completed this week and prep for a lot of work over the weekend that I plan to do. Didn't get a whole lot done this week. After the long hot weeks we had previously, we had a bit of rain this week and it was also just really hot and humid. So not a whole lot got done, but I did come out yesterday afternoon. The high was like 79. And I created a new flower bed over here, which I shared on Instagram briefly in my stories. If you have an Instagram, scoot over there and follow me on there. Sometimes I share things before I get regular videos up here and there on my stories, or I shoot some reels and stuff to post on my page there. First, the damage from the storm. So Sunday I was at Cultivate, which it was a great year at Cultivate this year, but there was a thunderstorm that came through that had some pretty straight line winds, and it blew so hard that it flipped one of the heavier Adirondack chairs I had next to the barn, flipped it through the yard and broke it. So I've got to figure out how to break that down and dispose of it. And then it damaged one of my Cleome. So let's turn the camera around right here and show you. So I'll put a picture on the screen. I got home Sunday night around 9 o'clock from Cultivate. I think it was like 8:45 or something, and I had to come out here as it was getting dark, and the Cleome had blowed completely over on its side. You can see a lot of these are still kind of leaning this way a little bit, but I tried to right it, and I actually stuck a little brick under it, and then when I came home from work the next day, it had completely wilted and was clearly dead. So instead of just digging it up, I did cut it to the ground, not completely to the ground. I left a little bit of a stalk. You can see there are some new shoots coming up. So it might be awkwardly sized compared to the others. I mean, these have gotten really big and they've been super nice pollinators for me this season. But if it fills back in a little bit, that would be nice. It was kind of made me real sad. Like the wind was so bad that it caused that damage. It had pulled the stake that this tree is staked to out of the ground, and everything just looked really weathered from the wind. So I think that's really some of the only damage, other than just everything being so windblown, that happened in the garden. Earlier this week, I had a new product come in that I ordered from Amazon. It's an 𝗍𝗓𝗗𝗧𝗦 iron supplement to provide some of these hydrangeas and annuals up here. So I put that on earlier this week because I've showed you the yellowing that's occurring. Let's take a look again. So you can see this is 𝗩𝗚𝗏𝗧𝗏, and I think it's already looking better. The new leaves are looking a little more green than it was. I might need to fertilize it again because it was having a lot of issues. See the weird burning and stuff that's going on with it, but this is clear sign of some type of deficiency. It hadn't put on any blooms this year, and then it started sticking out this tiny one this week. But similar issues with the petunias here. Those are looking good. And I also gave some iron to that as well. And you can see these hydrangeas were having similar problems too, and the new growth is looking a little better from this week. So hopefully that fixes the issue. I'll probably treat them again. I'm going to give it a week first and treat them again just to get some more in the ground, and maybe they'll recover nicely for me this season before we head into fall. And if it works for me, I'll share the product for you. It's not anything super special, but I don't want to share the name of it and then it doesn't work for the issue that I'm having. So hang tight for a couple weeks and I'll give you an update. Let's head through the flower bed and I'll show you a new bed I created yesterday evening. So Janie came on Monday and we shot a quick garden tour through the garden. Didn't show everything, mostly the front garden bed and the hydrangea hedge. So that'll be up on her channel, I think Monday. I'm gonna try and post this Saturday. It may not be posted until Monday or Sunday. So you may see one or the other before. So this is the bed I've made for my hydrangea trialing. Now I'll show them to you briefly. This video is not about the hydrangeas, but I just want to show you how many of them I got when we go talk about some other things. But this bed is roughly a 25-foot diameter. I came 12 inches out from the trunk, or 12 feet out from the trunk. So with the trunk added in there, it's about 25, 26 feet total across. It gets good morning sun this way, and then this part of the bed gets evening sun this way. So I think it's going to be a nice area to trial hydrangeas that don't need all day sun. Obviously this will provide nice protection for it. I got to trench a little bit of irrigation. If you remember, I split this bed into 2 zones, and I'm going to come off that zone, trench it a little bit under the ground into here, and I'm only going to run black distribution tubing and plug in where I put a hydrangea in this area. Now I got so many hydrangeas that I'm probably going to have to turn this bed into a bigger bed as well. This isn't a particularly scientific test of the hydrangeas, but I want it to be as scientific as possible, so the hydrangeas that I'm testing in both of these areas will receive similar light, similar conditions, so there's not necessarily a huge amount of unfairness between the conditions that they're growing in when we determine which ones will bloom best in Zone 6 or in Southwest Ohio, Indiana generally. Let's just take a look at everything, shall we, as we walk back to the back to show you a few plants that I've got that I'm excited to share with you. So here's the Adirondack chair that got flipped across the yard here. It broke the legs off of it and broke this completely in half, this arm here. But these are the hydrangeas that I've gathered. Those are set for a separate video, probably be released next week. We're going to cover these hydrangeas today and a couple trees that I picked up. So these were at the Cultivate show. Proven winners had reserved them for me since I'm locally, and they are newer to trees. Several have been out several years, but they're releasing some new varieties, and this is a couple of them. This one's called a Showtime crabapple, and I'll be planting it in a future video. It is a pretty large crabapple, so it gets roughly 15 to 20 foot wide and 25 foot tall. So not the smallest of crab apples, probably like an average size crab apple. And then this one here, which I mentioned a couple videos ago, is a Stairway to Heaven styrax. It's also called a snowbell. It's a really interesting snowbell, has really nice foliage, and the bells, or the blooms that are typically look like little ballerina skirts, kind of open as they get a little bigger and or as they age, making them look a little more like stars. But let's take a look at this shrub. Oh, there's a daddy longlegs in here right here. So this is a new variety on the market. It's called Yardline. Now this is not supposed to be hardy to Zone 6. And since it's not hardy in Zone 6, I took it with me at Cultivate because I want to test it. I'm going to put it on the south-facing side of the house against the brick and see how well it survives this winter. This thing is a gorgeous specimen. I don't think I took a picture of it at the show. They had another one that would literally have filled my entire car. That was absolutely gorgeous. But these leaves are so glossy and perfect. And it was bred as a privacy screen, but it's not necessarily hardy here, and we're going to test that. So we'll see if it comes back or not. I'm going to get this planted probably this weekend so it can settle in before winter and the cold comes. If you're ever interested in trialing something that's just a zone outside of you, we've not had horrible winters here since I've lived in Ohio. It's never gotten like super down to -10 Fahrenheit like it can in Zone 6. And I kind of expected us this warm winters that we've had recently to kind of bump up to potentially a Zone 7, and they didn't move us when they redid the USDA chart of the zones. But I'm going to test it, and if you ever have something that you want to test outside of your zone, one zone can sometimes be a good way to test that, and you should get it planted earlier in the season so it has time to root in well. So we still got about 3 months, close anyway, August, September, and then usually we get toward the end of October before we have our first frost. So hopefully this plant can get rooted in well on the south side of the house. And you want to plant those early. Spring would probably be preferable rather than this part of the summer, but I'm going to have it on drip irrigation. I'll give it some good starter fertilizer to get going, and then we'll see how it fares throughout the winter and if it comes back in spring. I believe this variety is supposed to be evergreen. I don't know if it will be evergreen here, So this is all about trialing this here to see if it works, and if it does, I will be really excited. But you can also find microclimates around your house, and that's where I'm going to be placing this. I would consider it a microclimate. It's against brick. It'll absorb the sun and the heat from the sun in winter and radiate that off the house a little bit. So it should stay a little warmer right there where I'm planting it, but you just never know. And if it is only truly hardy to zone 7, it could live this winter, it could live next winter, and then it could die the winter after that. So we're going to give it a try. Now I want to introduce you to a new little friend of mine. It's a hydrangea arborescens called Flowerful. And I'm really excited about this variety. If you've watched my channel for a couple years, you know I was kind of known for my incredible hydrangea hedge on the north side of my last home. I've not planted any hydrangea arborescens varieties, which is what this is, also called Annabelle is the generic name, and that's kind of the default everyone calls it. Annabelle is has very, very weak stems. I would never plant it when there are other options available. 𝗩𝗏𝗘𝗦 by Proven Winners was a great improvement on that. Really big blooms, much sturdier stems. But if you got heavy rains or a thunderstorm came through, I still ended up having to stake mine, not necessarily to keep the blooms all upright in most cases, but to keep them contained so it didn't flop towards the edges. And I did that last year, I think, on that incredible hedge I had, maybe the year before. I had to start staking it, and it was like entering its 5th year. This is an improved variety, and it might look a little rough right now because it's sat at Cultivate without a whole lot of water probably for a few days. I think they set up for those events starting on Thursday or Friday, and it runs through Tuesday. So usually all these plants can have our ice cubes. So we're going to give it a lot more love than it received last weekend. But I got 5 of these. Ryan from First Edition Shrubs and Endless Summer Hydrangeas let me take a few home. This is going to be released next year. And the improvements of this are really sturdy stems, and it blooms 2 to 3 times as many flowers, or it produces 2 or 3 times as many flowers as regular Annabelle or others on the market. So I just want to show you the stem, how sturdy the stems are. Like, that's nuts, just so you know. I posted a little Instagram reel of it with how sturdy these stems are. I overhead watered this about an hour and a half ago for like 30 minutes, and you can see this is nuts. So Ryan let me take a few of these home from the display at the end of Cultivate, and I'm actually going to Bailey's in 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks. So I'm flying to Minnesota, and I'll be taking y'all along with me to show you some cool things. And I'm really excited about seeing all of the hydrangeas literally growing in a field. It's nuts. Like, can you imagine just going and seeing a field of hydrangeas? Well, that's what we're gonna see. But these 5 hydrangeas are gonna create a hedge right here along the fence. So you see where that bed ends down there. I'm gonna come up and bring it up to the front, and 5 may be too many for this variety. It gets wider than it gets tall. I think the stats say it gets 3 to 4 foot tall and 4 to 5 foot wide or something, so it spreads out a little further. But I think it'll be gorgeous right here, and the stems are going to be super sturdy. It is the north side of the house, but it gets sun this time of the day, which will be really nice. Kind of similar to my other hydrangea hedge I had, and it's not quite as protected, I think, as my last house. So it'll get a little more sun too as well, and I think it's going to work really well. So I'm going to try and get these planted this weekend as well. I'm going to come through with my edging machine and edge that bed over there, and then throw down some wood chip mulch I have. So out of all things hydrangeas, I am like a sucker for a strong stem. I talk about that on my channel all the time. If you're buying a hydrangea with floppy blooms, why are you buying a hydrangea with floppy blooms? When there are newer varieties out there that hold the blooms up better, that are just as pretty as older varieties that do not. And speaking of, let's take a look at the Limelight Prime Hydrangea Hedge. Now, with the storm that came through last week, some of the blooms are drooping a little bit. Although this is a variety that has stronger stems, as I think I mentioned in my last video, it's not unusual for your hydrangea to droop the first couple years you plant it until it gets really strong wood on some of those stems. So if you're having issues with it drooping, you come through in late winter before or right after it starts setting buds, trim out all of those stems that are less than the thickness of a pencil, and that will help. So you can see the ones that are drooping the most, like look how skinny this stem is here. And it's also just kind of weirdly growing. So that would be one that I would want to prune off next year. I'm not doing it now because obviously it's got a bloom on it and it's gorgeous. And you can see how these blooms are aging here to pink very nicely on this variety. We've got some that are actually pretty progressed. It's interesting to see that some of them are already turning papery, like these right here. Some of them are still like almost fully white, and others are somewhere in between in this ombre stage. It was a lot of work getting this space ready to be planted this year, but I'm so glad I did it because it brings me so much joy every time I see it inside the house or in the backyard. I'll walk through the kitchen and you can see it through the windows all the way back here. And then in a couple years, only a couple years, I mean, as much as these grew this year, next year they could be as tall as the fence, but most likely that'll be 2 years away. And then they'll be meeting and be a perfectly even hedge all the way across. It's gonna be glorious. All right, as a teaser for the next video, I have purchased, or I think I got maybe 6 hydrangeas from Proven Winners while I was at Cultivate. And I've purchased 19 more, I think is how many I've gotten. So there's a total of 26 𝗩𝗏𝗧𝗦 and 𝗧𝗛𝗓𝗧 that we're gonna be trialing. I may come up with more. What I did was I just went and looked at the Garden Center's website, picked every variety that was reblooming. We're only testing reblooming. So all mountain hydrangeas tend to rebloom, some better than others. All 𝗩𝗏𝗧𝗦s do not rebloom. Most coming to the market do. And we're going to be testing the ones that do the best. I didn't spend a whole lot of time. If the website isn't very clear on a hydrangea, if you're looking for whether it reblooms or not, it probably doesn't rebloom because people like to tell people that. And we've got Proven Winners hydrangeas. We've got Endless Summer hydrangeas. I've got Monrovia hydrangeas in here, one from Garden Debut, and then one I think that's not necessarily associated with a plant brand, but it had good reviews and I'd seen some things on it that were good. So I'm excited to trial that one as well. All right, if you couldn't tell, I was telling you too much about that project because I'm really excited about it. So I'm going to cut this video off for today and I'll catch you on the next one. I don't know if it'll be the hydrangea project. That might be the next video, but I'm also gonna be planting a few things like those trees here in a video soon. So what's next? It's whatever comes up next. Whatever priority I think is the most urgent at any moment. Thank y'all for joining me, and remember, be a light. Take care. Bye.